What if I told you that the moment you stop waiting for someone to rescue you is the exact moment your real life begins? Think about it carefully. Most people live their entire lives under a dangerous illusion. They believe progress will arrive the day they finally meet the right mentor, find the perfect partner, or join the right group that will push them forward. They think strength comes from being lifted by others, from leaning on shoulders that can carry their weight, from external encouragement that keeps them walking. But that belief is not strength. It's dependency disguised as hope. And dependency, as comforting as it feels at first, always turns into a chain. When your ability to move forward is tied to the actions of others, your foundation will never be stable, because what is borrowed can always be taken away. Here lies the uncomfortable but liberating truth. No one is coming to save you. Not your closest friend, not your family, not your partner. And as cruel as that may sound at first, it is in fact the most empowering realization you will ever have. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, faced endless battles, betrayals, and losses, yet he wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He wasn't speaking theory. He was writing from the trenches of life, reminding us that the deepest power we have is internal, not external. I remember the years when I was caught in that trap. I thought strength was about having people who understood me, who applauded my victories, who recognized my struggles. I thought my motivation depended on being validated. I would share my dreams expecting cheers, reveal my wounds expecting comfort, confess my failures expecting sympathy. And when those responses didn't come, I felt abandoned. I labeled it betrayal, indifference, lack of love. But the truth was far simpler. Everyone carries their own burdens, their own storms, their own chaos. No one is obligated to carry yours. Expecting them to do so is not only unfair to them, it is destructive to you. The night I realized that no one was coming to lift me up, I felt shattered. But at the same time, for the first time, I felt awake. My next step was my responsibility alone. My recovery was not in anyone else's hands, and although it came wrapped in silence and pain, it was the most liberating awakening of my life. Epictetus, who lived most of his life as a slave, understood this better than anyone. He said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." What he meant was simple. Stop waiting for advice, applause, or rescue. Live your principles. Because when the night is darkest, no quote, no hug, no cheer will be enough to walk you through the fire. Only your own decision, your own resilience, your own will can do that. That is why Stoicism insists on self-reliance. Not to turn you cold or isolated, but to free you from the trap of waiting. Every moment you delay action because you expect someone else to carry you is a moment of life you lose forever. Solitude, the thing most people run from, became my greatest teacher. Alone, I was forced to ask the questions I had avoided for years. What do I really want? What am I truly willing to sacrifice? What excuses have I been hiding behind? Alone, I discovered that my judgment was sharper than I thought, my intuition more reliable than I had ever given it credit for. Alone, I learned to move without applause, to endure without witnesses, to act without permission. And in that silence, something remarkable happened. My character hardened like steel. Because true resilience is not forged in company, it is tempered in solitude. But here's where I want you to pay close attention. Even after hearing this, most people will still cling to the fantasy that someone, somewhere will see their struggle and come to save them. They will wait for the perfect timing, the perfect help, the perfect support system. That expectation is poison. It keeps you weak. The day you bury it is the day you are reborn. And in this video, I am going to guide you through the principles that transformed my own life. Principles rooted in Stoic wisdom that will teach you to stand tall, even when no one stands beside you. If you stay with me until the end, I promise you will discover the single most important truth that will not only dismantle your illusions about needing external support, it will show you the hidden source of power that has been with you all along. Now let me take you deeper into the uncomfortable truth. The very moments you consider your darkest, those nights of failure, rejection, loneliness, and uncertainty, are the exact moments where Stoicism wants you to wake up. Seneca wrote, "Fire tests gold, adversity tests brave men." Think about that. Adversity is not an interruption in life's plan. It is life's plan. And yet most people spend their time running from discomfort, distracting themselves with noise, pretending pain does not exist. They scroll endlessly, chase entertainment, drown in addictions, anything to avoid silence. But here's the paradox. The silence you fear is the only environment where your strength can grow. When you sit with pain instead of fleeing from it, you are not being punished. You are being trained. Every obstacle is a teacher in disguise. The problem is not that life is cruel, but that you expect it to be easy. And the longer you cling to that expectation, the weaker you remain. Let me tell you a story from history. Imagine Marcus Aurelius, ruler of the most powerful empire on earth. But from the outside, his life looked perfect. Power, wealth, prestige. But what people often forget is that Marcus wrote his meditations during wars, plagues, and betrayals. He buried children, faced rebellion, and endured endless criticism. Yet he never lost his balance. Why? Because he trained his mind to view every challenge as fuel for growth. When faced with loss, he reminded himself, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. That perspective is revolutionary. It means the suffering we feel is not caused by events themselves, but by the stories we tell ourselves about them. And stories, unlike events, can be rewritten. In modern life, the same principle applies. You lose your job and your mind screams, "This is the end." But a Stoic would say, "No, this is the beginning of reinvention." You face betrayal, and your mind says, "I can never trust again." A Stoic would say, "This is training in discernment and resilience." You fail in business, and your mind whispers, "I am worthless." Stoicism replies, "Failure is feedback, not identity." When you begin to shift your interpretation, pain stops being an enemy and becomes an ally. And here's the part that most people miss. When you embrace pain as a teacher, it stops having the power to destroy you. But let's pause for a moment. Ask yourself, when was the last time you sat in silence and faced your discomfort head-on? Not distracted yourself, not numbed it, but actually sat there and listened. If you can't remember, that's the root of your problem. Silence terrifies people because in silence, you meet yourself. And meeting yourself means confronting truths you've been hiding. Your fears, your insecurities, your wasted potential. Epictetus reminded his students that no man is free who is not master of himself. And mastery begins with awareness. If you never face your inner storms, they will always control you from the shadows. But if you do, you begin to take back control, not of the outside world, but of yourself, which is the only control that truly matters. And here's the loop you must hold on to. Most people will keep running. They will keep distracting themselves. They will keep waiting for life to get easier instead of learning how to get stronger. And that's why they will remain trapped in cycles of weakness. But not you. If you've stayed with me this far, it means something inside you is ready to stop running, ready to see pain differently, ready to face silence and use it as fuel. In the next part of this journey, I will show you how Stoicism gives us not just philosophy but practical tools, daily disciplines that transform suffering into strength. Stay with me, because once you learn these tools, you will never see adversity the same way again. By now you've realized that the Stoics were not interested in abstract theory. Their philosophy was not designed for ivory towers or endless debates. It was built for the battlefield of life. Epictetus taught in a small room with barely any possessions. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations in the chaos of war, and Seneca crafted his letters while surrounded by the corruption of Roman politics. they didn't care about. At sounding wise, they cared about living wisely. And that's why Stoicism has survived for over 2,000 years, because it works. But here's the problem. Most people consume Stoic ideas like motivational quotes, nod their heads, feel inspired for a few minutes, and then go back to their old patterns. That's like admiring a sword on the wall, but never picking it up when the enemy attacks. Stoicism is not about collecting wisdom, it's about practicing it daily, especially when it's hardest. So let me ask you, how do you begin practicing? The answer lies in discipline, small repeated acts that shape your character. For example, one of Marcus Aurelius's practices was morning reflection. He would wake up and remind himself, "Today, I shall meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, unsocial. They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil." Why would the Emperor of Rome start his day with such a grim list? Because he understood that expectation is half of suffering. By preparing his mind for difficulty, he robbed adversity of its surprise. In modern terms, imagine waking up and saying to yourself, "Today, someone will cut me off in traffic. Someone will misunderstand me. Someone will criticize me unfairly. But none of this has the power to take my peace unless I allow it." That single shift transforms your day. You move from being a victim of circumstances to being the master of your responses. Another practical tool is journaling, which both Marcus and Seneca practiced. But journaling for a Stoic is not about listing events, it's about interrogating yourself. Ask, where did I let anger control me today? Where did I waste time on things I cannot change? Where did I fail to live up to my values? This is not self-punishment, it's self-correction. Because as Seneca wrote, we are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality. When you journal, you separate what actually happened from the fearful stories you invented, and in that separation, you find clarity. But let me challenge you even further. The Stoics often practiced voluntary discomfort. They would sleep on hard beds, wear simple clothes, even fast from food, not because they enjoyed suffering, but because they wanted to remind themselves of this truth. If I can endure this, I can endure more. In a world addicted to comfort, this practice is more powerful than ever. Try it. Leave your phone aside for a day, take a cold shower, walk instead of driving, go without one luxury you think you can't live without. You'll discover two things. First, you are far stronger than you give yourself credit for. Second, most of what you call necessities are actually chains you've chosen. Epictetus taught that freedom is not achieved by gaining more, but by needing less. And here's the loop that will keep you thinking. These practices sound simple, but very few will actually do them. Why? Because they require effort, and effort is uncomfortable. Most people would rather remain in weakness than endure the temporary pain of discipline. But not you. You're here because part of you is tired of weakness. You're here because you sense that comfort has been lying to you, softening you, robbing you of resilience. And in the next part of this video, I'm going to show you what happens when you commit to these practices, not for a day, not for a week, but for a lifetime. What you will discover is something even emperors and slaves agreed on. That discipline, embraced willingly, becomes the foundation of unshakable freedom. Stay with me, because this truth will change the way you see every struggle ahead. If you've followed this journey so far, you've already sensed a shift inside you. You're beginning to see that life isn't waiting for you to gather courage. Life is testing you right now. The struggles you face are not random punishments. They are invitations to grow. But here's the challenge. Growth doesn't come from knowledge alone. It comes from facing emotions head-on. Think about anger, for instance. How many times have you lost hours, days, or even relationships because anger controlled you? Seneca warned, anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it. Isn't that true? The insult lasts seconds, but your reaction can last a lifetime. Or consider fear. Epictetus said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." Fear is rarely about the event itself. It's about the story your mind tells you before the event even happens. You fear rejection, but what you truly fear is the story. If I fail, I am worthless. You fear uncertainty, but the story is, if I don't know the future, I cannot handle it. These are illusions, phantoms of thought, and yet they control most lives. Let's bring this to a modern story. Imagine someone loses their job. Most people panic. Their mind spirals. How will I pay my bills? What will people think of me? My life is ruined. But a Stoic reframes it differently. This is not the end. This is training. This is my opportunity to reinvent, to sharpen my skills, to discover resilience I didn't know I had. The event is the same, but the perspective changes everything. Or take heartbreak. Most collapse into despair, telling themselves, "I'll never be loved again." But a Stoic would say, "This is a chance to master myself, to love without attachment, to build strength that no relationship can give or take away." See the pattern? It's not the world that changes. It's you. Marcus Aurelius lived this truth every day. He buried children, fought plagues, endured betrayal from those closest to him. He wrote not as a man free of pain, but as a man who refused to let pain dictate his soul. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This line has echoed for centuries because it reverses our natural instinct. We think obstacles stop us. Marcus reminds us, obstacles shape us. The wall in front of you is not a dead end. It's a forge. It is bending you, strengthening you, sharpening you for something greater. But here's the catch. You only benefit if you choose to see it that way. Otherwise, the same obstacle that could build you will break you. So let me ask you directly, what obstacle are you facing right now? What weight sits heavy on your chest each morning? What storm clouds your thoughts when you try to sleep? Is it failure, rejection, loneliness, debt? Understand this. That very thing, the thing you hate most, is your training ground. Life has put it in your path not to crush you, but to reveal you. The obstacle is not against you, it is for you. And the moment you stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "How can this strengthen me?" is the moment you transform pain into power. But here's where the story sharpens. Most people hear this and feel inspired, but then they forget. They go back to complaining, blaming, and waiting. That's why their lives don't change. Stoicism is not passive inspiration, it is active transformation. If you want this to work, you must practice it daily, like training a muscle. The question is, will you? Because in the next part of this video, I'm going to show you how these Stoic truths don't just apply to ancient Rome or rare philosophers. They apply to your life, right now, in ways you may never have imagined. And if you stay until the very end, you will see how the single most dangerous illusion people live with is the one that silently destroys their strength. Once you expose it, everything changes. And now we arrive at the truth that ties everything together, the truth most people never want to face but desperately need to hear. Life is not waiting to become easier. The storms will not stop, the losses will not vanish, the betrayals will not disappear. If you spend your life hoping for a future without pain, you will waste your entire existence waiting for a day that never arrives. Marcus Aurelius, at the height of his power, knew this better than anyone. He didn't write in his private journal about a hope for comfort. He wrote about preparing his soul for war. He understood that strength is not found in avoiding hardship, but in meeting hardship with a prepared mind. And that is the essence of Stoicism. To stop negotiating with reality, to stop begging the universe for softness, and instead to become so disciplined, so resilient, so unshakable, that no storm can break you. But here's the illusion that secretly destroys most lives. The belief that someone else will walk this path for you. That a mentor, a partner, a family member, or even luck itself will carry you through. That illusion is the greatest thief of all, because it steals the very thing that makes you powerful. Responsibility. Responsibility is not a burden, it is the key. The moment you take full responsibility for your life, your choices, your reactions, your growth, is the moment you step into freedom. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Think about that. Without adversity, you never discover who you truly are. Without struggle, you never meet your strongest self. So the very thing you've been wishing away, your hardships, are in fact the gateway to your greatness. Let me leave you with this story. A young man once asked Epictetus how to become strong. Epictetus didn't hand him a list of books or comforting words. He simply said, "Do not wish for events to happen as you want them to, but wish for them to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly." It sounds simple, almost too simple, yet it is the most radical shift you can ever make. Stop resisting reality. Stop wishing for a different past, a different family, a different set of circumstances. Instead, embrace what is in front of you as your path, your training ground, your forge. Once you do this, life stops feeling like an enemy and starts becoming your greatest teacher. So I ask you now directly, what are you going to do with your storm? Will you keep waiting for someone to save you? Or will you finally see that you've had the power all along? Will you keep begging for comfort? Or will you start building strength? The Stoics didn't promise a painless life. They promised an unbreakable soul. And that promise is still alive for you today. Your job is not to control the world, but to control yourself. Your job is not to avoid pain, but to transform it. Your job is not to wait for rescue, but to rise on your own. Stay with this thought as you close this video. The obstacle is the way, solitude is your training, and responsibility is your freedom. If you live by these principles, nothing can break you. Not failure, not betrayal, not loss. You will walk through storms that would destroy others, and you will come out unshaken, forged into steel. That is the Stoic path. And if you choose to walk it, you will discover that the life you've been searching for, the strength, the peace, the purpose, has been within you all along. Now it is time to embody it.